Welcome to Digital to Foot Traffic. I am Kevin Shi.
And I am Scott Jensen. We are digital marketers with massive experience in running brick and mortar stores.
Join us each episode as we explore the latest digital marketing trends and uncover strategies from the best in the industry. Welcome to another episode of Digital to Foot Traffic. I'm your host, Kevin Shi.
And I'm Scott Jensen. Glad to be back. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. We have a very special guest with us.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Oswald. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Glints. So we are a recruitment platform, the number one recruitment platform in Southeast Asia. We help companies to build their teams with young talent.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually started this business about 3 to 4 years ago. And the backstory to that was when we first started, we almost got thrown into prison for the business.
Okay.
What happened then was we were 1 year into army because in Singapore, we have to do 2 years of military service. And 1 year in the army, my friends and I were just too bored of throwing grenades and shooting guns. So we wanted to start something on the side. So the first version of Glints was an internship agency where we're just matching our friends up to startups for internships. Some reporter heard about us and they were like, oh, that's pretty cool. 3 young guys starting businesses. So she decided to feature us on the news, on the national newspaper.
How old were you back then?
We were 22.
Okay.
Yeah, 22, 21, 22. And at first, we were pretty happy because it was the first time we saw ourselves on the news.
Okay.
But on the exact same day, the military police called us out.
Okay.
And they were like, hi guys, what the hell is this? This is moonlighting and we're going to throw you guys into prison.
Okay.
So, we heard that fucked up shit happens to people in military prison, so we didn't want to go there.
Okay.
So we're scared of peeing our pants, right? So the funny thing is we later on found out that the definition of moonlighting is making illicit income.
Okay.
And the business was losing money at that point of time.
So revenue doesn't count, huh?
No, we were pre-revenue. We weren't even making any money yet.
Oh, so you didn't charge anything?
Yeah, it was just like idea stage, right? So we got off the hook from that, and that was the start.
Okay.
So fast forward 1 year later, we were of course finally making some revenue.
Okay.
And then we were going to go to school but we actually haven't gone to college at that point of time.
Okay.
So we're going to go to the US for studies. And
okay.
Initially, all three of us were going to go to 3 separate schools, which is Stanford for my partner, Wharton for another one, and I was going to Berkeley. So the initial plan was to run the business while juggling our studies as well. Just a terrible idea because 1 month in, it was very clear that neither the business nor our studies were going anywhere.
Okay.
So we decided to drop out of school, come back to Singapore and focus on business. So the national newspaper actually called us Singaporean parents' worst nightmares.
You still have a clipping of that? Can you send?
Yeah.
Can you send that to me? I'll post it in the footnotes.
Sure. Singaporean parents' worst nightmares. So very proud of the title. But fast forward 3 years, we've raised about $4 million in funding since, and about 300,000 users all across on Glints. So I say the nightmare turned out to be a pretty sweet dream so far.
So you guys are profitable yet?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's great.
So that was a very bad idea because just like a few weeks in, it was very clear that neither the business nor our studies were going anywhere. And I just remember that every morning I would go onto the roof of my apartment. It's a very nice view. I can see the Golden Gate Bridge from where I was. And every morning I would be spending like the first 20, 30 minutes of the morning just going through the emails for my startup, doing some work. But I would have to stop whatever I was doing and go down for lessons every morning after I just got a bit done. So there was just this morning where I realized that, hey, I really didn't want to go down for classes anymore. And I just stayed on the roof and I never gone down for classes ever since. So I think it was just having that clarity on what I really wanted. And for me, I really wanted to have my own business. And it was very clear that spending 4 years in school was not going to get me closer to that. And I had an opportunity on hand, which will allow me to pursue my dreams. So I had to grab it.
Wow.
That's fantastic. All right. So I think that there's this misnomer that you kind of hear this fairy tale a lot of going through school. And then you decide, I'm going to drop out of school. I'm going to start the business. And then the story kind of like you hear it was hard. And then 5 years later, we're billionaires and everything's great. But that's not reality, right? Like it's hard work been the most difficult part so far for you?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people glorify the path of just like taking huge risk and dropping out of school, giving up a job, quitting a job, and starting a business. But I think the best entrepreneurs are not just risk takers, but they're also risk mitigators. So it's actually not as risky as it sounds, because for us, our business, we didn't drop out of school to start the business. Our business was already started before we dropped out of school. And we had funding. We had at least $500,000 in funding. We had some revenue going. We had customers. So we had something to cling on to. It wasn't like we were dropping out of school with nothing in hand.
Singapore is not it's not a startup culture like 10 years ago. I mean, the number one thing is to get a stable job, get a nice apartment, get a clubhouse, and just follow the orders of the government, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Has that changed a lot now? And what's the trend now? Does people like to start up? Like, is it encouraged? What about among the families?
So 10 years ago, it was definitely not a mainstream or conventional path. I would say that right now it's becoming increasingly popular. It is encouraged almost to a certain extent by the government. We're starting to see a few success stories locally as well. So I think that definitely helps to kickstart the ecosystem. So more and more kids are thinking about starting their own business now.
Can you explain to Scott? I think I know this, but explain to Scott. In Asia, Singapore is known as the most generous government towards startups. If you guys do like register a company, they give you 3 years tax-free and they give you all this money. Can you explain that to Scott?
Yeah, so Singapore is a really conducive place to start a business, like especially for startups. The tax incentives aside, there is also a lot of government funding and grants available. So like we've known so many people who just had an idea, they wanted to pursue it. It was their first business and they managed to get 50 grand in funding or 100 grand in funding from the government, equity free. So it's just, equity free. Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay. What's the motivation behind that? Is it because of employment, or is it because of just kind of growing a society or a different part of society? What's motivating the government to do that?
I think the key motivation comes from them wanting to build an ecosystem of startups and entrepreneurs. And initially what they did was to just throw money at the problem, and I think it kind of helped. I think it wasn't the only thing that was done, but it definitely helped to get a lot of people started.
Is it only for IT and tech startups? I mean, if I do self-storage, would I get some funding?
Actually, I think yes. They do have funding for that as well. Yeah, it's not just for IT and tech startups.
I got a funny story to tell Oswald and Scott. So this Australian guy came to Hong Kong, I think last month. He's a media company, right? And he's filming Rise. He's looking for entrepreneurs to film. His customer is the Hong Kong government. So he's been hired. He's this media firm. He's been hired by Hong Kong government to make this Rise convention looks really cool. Rise is the #1 startup and IT convention in Hong Kong. We started about 3 years ago, right? So government's really trying to push it and promote it. People to come here to meet different VCs, entrepreneurs, startup kids, right? And since that guy didn't know anybody, he only knew me, so he couldn't get anybody to interview. I was his first and full length interview that I did, right? And all I talked about was not about tech, not about digital, nothing. All I talked about was self-storage, which I had to fire and kill 2 firemen, by the way. So the government was not impressed.
Not impressed.
so they were like trying to get these guys to film about like IT and startup in Hong Kong, and they're filming about self-storage that they're trying to regulate and demolish right now. So anyways, that was a pretty that was a side story.
Pretty sad.
It was rough. It's been a rough time. Well, maybe can we switch a little bit to your current business right now, knowing kind of where you come from. But I think one of the questions that I've managed in multiple, I guess, digital agencies, both in-house and kind of from the agency side. Yeah. And there's kind of some basic questions that I think some of our audience would be interested in. And one of the questions I get all the time is, hey, at what point do I need to bring certain aspects of my business in-house? For example, what point do I need to bring in at what point do you bring SEO in-house, or paid search in-house, or analytics, or optimization? Some of those things, and it sounds like from a business standpoint, you have to have a feeling for that. Mm-hmm. What do you usually recommend or think about in those cases? Yep.
I think digital marketing is so key to every business nowadays. because every business has got to be digital in some sense, right? And it has to be a core part of the business. And I think the earlier you have someone in-house, the better it is. And I think a common misconception that a lot of people have is that, hey, if I bring it in-house, it's going to be extremely expensive, or I got to hire a local and I can't find the right people in my country, or it's really expensive. But what we have seen is an increasing trend of, no, you can hire someone full-time working for you, but that person doesn't have to be based in an expensive city like Singapore or Hong Kong. You can actually hire someone in-house, but offshore. So one of the trends that we have seen is businesses in Singapore, they're starting to hire, say, people in Indonesia or in Eastern Europe, for example. And it's so much cheaper because to hire, say, a digital marketer or an engineer in Singapore is like $4,000 to $5,000 Sing or US dollars a month.
How much US is that?
So 4,000 Sing is about 3,000 US.
Okay.
Yeah, just for a fresh graduate with not much experience. But
Okay.
I can get someone with 2 to 3 years of experience for less than 1,000 US per month in Indonesia.
Okay.
And that's what we have been doing, because just tapping on this global supply pool of talents that's coming out, especially in the digital space, expands the talent pool so much more and expands the potential. So rather than hiring someone in-house, which is so expensive, rather than having someone outsource and working on it part-time for us, we have someone working on it full-time at less than half the price in another part of the world. And you can find good people and good talent in this spaces as well.
Can I interrupt you there for a second? You have a very unique case in Singapore for Scott. He has a pool of talent in this island called Bintang, which is like a 30-minute boat ride to Singapore. So basically, those guys can just come to Singapore every day, or I don't know, once a week, twice a week, right? So they can arbitrage. In Hong Kong, we can't. We used to be able to in China, like 15 years ago when the salary was low. China's salary is not low anymore. China's salary is like 75% of Hong Kong now. So we don't have that. So can you replicate that model throughout the world where we don't have like a nearby disparity of wages? And my second question is, how do you manage people if they're in a remote location that you cannot get access to right away?
Yeah, definitely. So I think just to give a bit more context, we have been helping companies in Singapore to build up their engineering and digital marketing teams in Batam, which is like a 30 minutes ferry ride away, in Indonesia. And we're just arbitraging on the cost differences. It's like a 5 to 10 times cost savings. And I think the answer to the question of whether or not we can replicate this model in other parts of the world, which may not have this geographical advantage, is I think it's still possible, because we also, even for our own business, we also have engineers in India and in Jakarta. And one of my main digital marketers right now is actually based in Poland.
Okay.
So
wow,
that's definitely not a 30 minutes ferry ride away. So it's possible. So you don't just have to hire locally, or you don't just have to look in the surrounding islands. You can actually go beyond your region, look for someone who is based further away, arbitrage on that cost differences, and you can gain access to a much wider pool of talents. Whereas the question of how to manage them, so I was talking to someone from Facebook, one of the managing directors with Southeast Asia, and they say that Facebook don't ever hire anyone remotely, but they do open up remote teams. So what this means is they'll only hire someone in a city if they have a critical mass of at least 3 people. And we have been trying to apply that to our own business as well. And it's been working out really well. So rather than just hiring, say, one person in Taiwan or one person in Shenzhen who just like sits at his or her home and you don't know whether or not that person is working, maybe start with at least a critical mass of 2 to 3 people. So at least they have a team, they're working together, they keep each other in check, keep each other motivated. And with this cost differences, sometimes you can do that. This can get someone for 1/3 or half the price in a second or third tier city.
Wow, that's a good idea. Scott, got any comments on that?
Yeah, so Oswald, really, really interesting how you're arbitraging salaries for people and sourcing it. And Kevin, this goes right along with the conversation that we were having right before we got on, which is the ability that for people to work anywhere and do anything. And Oswald, to the same point, right now, so we use a bunch of developers and some talent out of Eastern Europe, and have done so in a previous space. we had 2 development offices, kind of what you referenced before. One was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and the other was in Jakarta, India. And we basically built those that way so that time zones would overlap with each other entire time, so that we could kind of keep a constant rate of work going out. And the communication flow would be consistent throughout as well. Now, there were some secrets to that, right? And you, I think, hinted at some of this, and you kind of know that if we have what we would try to do is constantly if we hire, for example, a team of 30 developers in some country, then we try to constantly have 2 of those developers in our main office at all time. So we'd rotate. We'd bring 2 guys in for 2 weeks, and then we'd rotate another 2 guys in. So there's that constant kind of form of communication and that overlap, so they could be kind of there in person and doing that. That communication piece became really important to the success there. But overall, we've seen tremendous success, and that arbitrage you're doing on wages and salaries there is really interesting. I think it's a great win.
Yeah, Scott, and I think what you mentioned about rotating and bringing them in, it's also one of the really key tactics to making this model work as well, because it builds trust. And I think for any team to work, there has to be trust. And it's much easier to trust someone if you have at least seen that person face to face before, shaken hands, you guys have gone for lunch together, you know how that person looks like, how that person smells like, and there's just more trust, right? I think a lot of mistakes that people make when they first start on this offshoring or outsourcing model is they just hire someone, they never met a person before, and they never seen or touched a person before, never even shaken hands. So one of the things that we do is when we hire someone offshore, let's say, no matter how far away the person is, bring them in for the first month of in-person onboarding. And then after that, they can go back to wherever they are. But at least you have worked together before and you have seen that person, and you just build trust. And then things can move a lot faster from there.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, can we shift? I know we only have a few minutes, but I'd like to shift and just get an idea of what are the big trends you see coming in on the market? Where do you see kind of digital marketing going in the next couple of years?
So we're starting to see this interesting shift from from the millennials to Gen Z. So like sort of from the Facebook generation to the Instagram generation now.
We were talking about that before.
Yeah, Facebook is starting to be for old people. And I think one of the most interesting trends I've seen there is this generation of Gen Z are not just content producers, not just content consumers, but also content producers.
Facebook also, no?
Facebook as well. Even more now. So like you see people posting Insta stories, posting photos every day. And what businesses can do is really to tap on this trend, engage their audience more. So rather than just making a one-way promotion, putting out posters and videos and everything, what we have seen to work better, it's running more engaging marketing campaigns. For example, surveys, polls, or anything that engages the audience and encourages them to produce content at the same time. So for example, one of the campaigns we ran was what we call the best internship in the world. Best internship in the world. So we would, a chosen intern would get to go on a fully sponsored internship to Bali.
Okay.
For 3 months, all paid for accommodation, flights, and she gets like a nice fat compensation as well. And that was really exciting for a lot of people. But to get the word out, it wasn't a one-way promotion. We got applicants to start submitting videos and photos of themselves, of why they wanted this internship, why they wanted this opportunity. And that went pretty viral. So that would have since worked better. Okay.
Yeah. Scott, you got any more questions?
I think that's fantastic and great insight. Really appreciate you taking the time and effort to talk. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Scott.
And what's one more question? Also, what's your current plan right now for your company? Like, are you guys going to IPO? I heard you guys are profitable now. That's good. Are you guys raising more money? Are you guys expanding to more cities? What's the update for you guys?
Yeah, so we are focused on the Southeast Asia market for now. So focused on becoming the dominant leader for Indonesia and Singapore market. And we're looking at other markets like Malaysia and Vietnam next.
Okay, so if people want to use your service, how can they reach you? Can you leave some contact? And how do you charge?
Awesome. So if any companies want to build their teams offshore, I want to tap on the cost arbitrage in the Indonesia market, they can just head over to glints.com. So that's GLINTS.com and go to the employers page, and they'll be able to sign up there. So we help businesses to bring on board this talent. We charge a one-time success fee. It's about 1,500 Sing dollars, and then we have a money management fee of $100 to cover the payroll and the office seats.
Okay. Well, that's very good. Good talking to you, Oswald, and all the best success for your future. And we'll continue our podcast next time. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Awesome.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Digital to Foot Traffic. Join our mailing list at digitaltofoottraffic.com for more of our digital insights and strategies.
Leave us a review on iTunes or your favorite Android apps and subscribe so we'll show you the second we launch a new episode.